My name is Victor Dorfer and from the Management Science Department. And what we would like to do today is to try to figure out what leadership is. The concept of leadership is a bit fuzzy and I cannot give you a definition of it. But what we can do, we can recognize leaders. So what if I ask you to think of a great leader? Here are a couple of people who are usually always mentioned as some of the great leaders the audience can think about. And what we can do is, if we can recognize that these people are great leaders, then looking into what is common between them, then we can probably figure out what leadership is, because that common thing should be leadership. Of course, there are too many people and it is very difficult to analyze all of them. It would require a long time and lots of resources. But this is, for example, what Howard Gardner has done in his book called Leading Minds. But a slightly quicker way, what we can try, is to look into some of the most different leaders that we know. And then by looking at these different leaders, if we can find something that is common between two people who are so incredibly different than Mother Teresa and Adolf Hitler, then that's probably leadership. The first question is, how do we know that these people are leaders? And actually the answer is pretty obvious, yet most people don't think about this from the outset, because they have followers. Both of these people had followers at their own time and also quite a bit since then. And obviously leadership is not about whether someone is a nice person or an evil person. Well, we see obviously a huge contrast in that aspect here as well. But these two people are contrasting in probably almost everything, in all personal characteristics. That probably suggests also that there is more than one way of being a great leader. But there is something that causes people following these leaders, and that is probably the essence of the leadership. In order to understand what is this common thing, let's look at what kind of sources of power we can see. There are different sources of power. For example, if someone has the position and that position gives some sort of power. For example, if you have a boss who can fire you, that's a source of power. You will do that because of the position of this other person. It is also very important that in this type of power source, it is not dependent on the person. It comes with the position. And if you replace the person in the position, the power level will be roughly the same. The second typical source of power is money. For example, if you have something to do that you are not particularly keen on doing, and someone pays you a lot of money, you can probably do it, unless you have strong objections. But there are some people who think that anyone is willing to do anything if paid sufficiently. And there is another source of power which is a bit more tricky than the previous two, because these are obvious. And of course you can think more generally in terms of payment than money. So anything that rewards you for something, that's this type of source of power as money. And there is this position type power, which is basically about that the person can punish you. But there is also knowledge as a power, and we can trace that back to Sir Francis Bacon, who came up with the idea that knowledge is power. But how knowledge is power? In this sense, it is different, because we are looking into leadership. It is power over others. It also gives you power so knowledge also gives you power in the sense of you are being allowed to do something, you are capable of doing something because you have some sort of knowledge. But that is very different from what you can make other people do. So how to obtain followers because of your knowledge? Well, it is actually not that complicated, because if you know something, you can teach these other people and you enable them. So for example, if you are going abroad for a semester and you teach your grandmother how to use Skype or Facebook, you can get in touch, and you are empowering your grandparents to be in touch with you during your time away. Now, none of these is leadership. leadership is something different. And the essence of leadership is somewhere in the personality of those people who can convince you, who can motivate you to do something, and you are following them. Now, this is something we call charisma. Charisma is a complex of personal characteristics. It means at the easiest level that your thoughts, what you say and what you do are in harmony, and people sense that. Actually, we frequently say as the characteristic of opposite to leadership that the person is preaching water and drinking wine. Now that is about losing this harmony between what you are doing, how you are speaking, and what you are thinking. Now, can leadership be learned? Well, probably some of it, but certainly not all of it. So it seems that it is some sort of combination between natural talent as well as hard work to learn it very well. If you think about different leaders, what people say if they have a bad leader, they will say, he made us do this. It is not what we wanted to do. He made us, he forced us to do something. That's bad leadership. It can still be very effective, and sometimes you might use it, but it is usually labeled as bad. What people will talk about when they have a good leader? He convinced us doing this. He motivated us doing this. And we wanted to do it because he motivated us. Now, in terms of the great leader, however, the leader is not even mentioned usually. We did it, we wanted this. So the leader, in a sense, disappears, and people so strongly identify with what the leader wanted that they go that way, feeling it their own. And that is linking very much to one of the important things that the leaders do, which is energizing people. So it is both their own strength, which is displayed, and energizing other people through this motivation. What happens with the mistakes? Well, great leaders are usually not punishing mistakes. They are motivating you to try overcome them. Now, if we said that the essence of leadership is to have followers, that's how we recognize the leaders, then how many followers? Well, it depends on where you are, obviously. So if you are at the not very high level of an organizational hierarchy, in that case, you might energize, motivate, and lead those few people. If you are the top executive of, I don't know, Apple or Microsoft, then it will be a very large number of people. If you are a politician, like head of a country, then it can be a very large number of people. But leadership is the same in the small and in the large. What is typical about what leaders do is that they are taking enormous number of decisions. And John Kotter, who was one of the investigators of what leadership is about, was emphasizing that this is probably the most important thing, and that leaders take probably hundreds of decisions a day, so they can decide usually in a matter of seconds about very important things. That also means that these leaders take responsibility for their decisions. Sometimes they delegate their decisions, but they still stay responsible. So now have a look what we see in the management literature. The term management has a very strange origin as a kind of what people do in organizations. It was Henri Fayol who has written a book which was called Administration. There was a second part of the title, but the administration is important. In the first translation, it was translated as administration. In the second translation, for whatever reason, it became management. So that's where we see management coming from. Now, what is very important is that Fayol saw leadership as one of the roles that managers perform. So it was planning, organizing, controlling, plus leadership. But then times kept changing, so the changes in the environment became more turbulent, the whole business environment became more dynamic, and so on. And then John Kotter says that something strange happened, and he says that it was something like as if your job, which was previously accounting, from one day to another became accounting plus piano playing. Now, nobody can do that. So it is so different things doing accounting and piano playing, especially if it comes at once. So what he did, he moved the leadership from the +1 of the manager roles, and put it at the same level as management. And he tried to find parallels between management and leadership. So he said that in terms of planning, what planning is about, how it corresponds to something in leadership. Well, establishing directions. So the leader is dreaming about where, for example, the company should be in the future, and that is the direction where we should be heading, and the management is doing the planning. Organizing corresponds to aligning people, and controlling corresponds to motivating and inspiring. So Kotter's argument was that the manager and the leader should be two separate people, because what they do is so substantially different that it cannot be done most of the time by the same person, unless it is a specially talented person for both. And he also distinguishes strongly between the different mindsets. So if you just think about management and leadership, we can easily find like well-sounded differences. For example, we often say that you cannot manage people into battle, you need to lead them. Of course, this still means that you need to have followers, because if I'm running ahead and nobody is coming after me, then I'm just a kamikaze, not a leader. Of course, there is a huge difference between peacetime army and wartime army. So when you have peacetime, then you can have decisions taken in teams, you can have discussions, and you can be very nice and inclusive, and everyone can participate. But when the battle is happening, then someone needs to give the orders. Another beautiful metaphor for this is the captain of the ship. When the sea is calm, then you sail nicely and you can discuss everything, you can take decisions together, you can get into all sorts of details about how we should plan our future and so on. But when there is a storm, then someone has to give commands, because otherwise the ship will just sink. It is even less important that the decisions are right than that they are in harmony with each other. Therefore, they will keep your ship alive. Another interesting example that is frequently used in the management literature is if you would drop a group of people into a forest and they don't see the way out, how would you describe who is the manager and who is the leader? Kotter says that the manager would put together the team, assign roles to the various people, give out the tools for the various tasks, and assign the people to the tasks as well, and organize who will be working where and how and so on. While the leader will be the person who climbs the highest tree and looks which way we should go in order to get out from the forest. So the essence between the leader and the manager, according to Kotter, is that they are two different mindsets. It also corresponds to what they are focused on. The manager is focused on complexity, while the leader is focused on change. So the leader is envisioning some sort of future where the organization should be in that future, and then obviously will try to lead people into that direction. This future picture is always fuzzy. Now, what the manager's job is to get this fuzzy picture and convert them into well-structured tasks, so something that can actually be carried out. This also means that if we look at what is more important for your company, whether an undermanaged and overled organization is better or an overmanaged and underled. Of course, any great organization will be strong both on management and leadership. But actually management is more important, because you cannot, your organization will not survive, cannot exist without management, which is about having the job done that we need to do every day. In contrast, without leadership, you can survive for a while if there are no enormous changes in your business environment. So that is what Kotter argues as the difference between the management and leadership will be. And in the second part of this presentation, we will see why the manager and the leader should be still the same person.